I'm ready to slash and burn.
No quarter. I am going to be uncomfortable and all over you from start to finish.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. I feel like December is just going to be an NHRL month, the way that things are going right now, but I am completely okay with that. So today on the show, I have Peter Garnache, who has Ablation Retro, has made other robots and also was part of Team Horizon at Battlebots for season 7. So welcome to the show.
Hey, Christine, thanks for having me on.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely saw you around quite a bit at the taping for Battlebots. So, it's excited to have you on the show and get to talk about this because, obviously like at that time, I've tried to keep up with the NHRL events and I've only started watching maybe since July, but like I had no idea. And then I watched this past stream and I'm like, oh, there's Peter and there's Peter again. And it was just, it was a lot of fun. So I'm excited to talk about all of the robot things. The first thing that I wanted to kind of get into was just like how you got started with building robots in the first place, because everybody kind of has their own origin story of sorts of how you got into this. So I'm curious to hear yours.
So the 30-second version starts well before I started building combat robots. Back when I was 9 or 10 for Christmas, I got a Lego Mindstorms EV3 set. Put that together, started building robots, and was hooked. In middle school, I joined my first FRC team. Ended up loving the competitive robotics aspect of that whole world. And in the 5 remaining years of school, I did 5 years of FRC, 4 years of FTC, and then helped found an FLL team and mentored them for 3 years. So I did like 13 competitive robotics seasons in 5 years. Once that was done, that's really only available for high schoolers. Once I went to college, I joined the combat robotics team. During my time at Rose-Hulman working on my mechanical engineering degree, I spent all of my free hours designing several robots that I ended up going and competing with. And from then, once I graduated, I finally had the money I needed to spend to build whatever I wanted and fight it wherever I wanted. So that's the short story on how I got started.
That's awesome. Was there anything like, at what age did you see, Battlebots, and are there any like robots in that time that you were particularly drawn to?
I couldn't tell you what age. It was when I was young. We didn't really watch TV as a household, so I saw fights show up from the Comedy Central stuff on YouTube. I don't remember what all I saw, but I think I remember seeing Warhead, and that robot is just an engineering marvel, and watching it fight. I just remember going and searching and seeing if I could find like every possible video of it fighting. And that's way back in the past. I don't know when that was, but it all started with Comedy Central.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure that I'm quite a bit older than you. I've said on the show before, for me, it was seeing Tentamushi back in the day. That was like the first robot that I was like, wow, that's like a giant ladybug and it's a robot and it's fighting other robots, and it was the craziest thing that I'd ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, obviously, Battlebots and robots in general have come quite a ways since those days from Comedy Central. Speaking of which, we just wrapped up things with season 7 filming of Battlebots, and you got to be there with Team Horizon. I know you had told me that you've been to it before, but not for like the full 2 weeks as part of a team. Give me like the non-spoilery take of what that experience was for you.
Oh man, I know all of you guys at home who haven't known Battlebots wonder how do you spend 2 full weeks working on these robots? And like builders tell stories about being there at 6 a.m. and staying till midnight till they get kicked out the next day. And I didn't believe it, you know. I didn't. I was like, there's no way there's that much work to do on a robot. And so we showed up with a team of 10 people, and there was that much work to do on the robot. I mean, it was robot in and out the whole day, every day. So I think we got to see some of the stuff in Vegas at some point during one of the dark days. But I mean, the whole filming, it was just insane. The schedules we had to keep, and you'll see a robot go out there and just get absolutely obliterated, and the team starts to work rebuilding it for the next day. I mean, never have I seen such a large piece of, I guess, scrap turn into a fully functioning, ready to fight robot as I did in most of the pits at Battlebots. I mean, this kind of damage happens to everybody, win or lose the matches. And I can't wait. I can't wait to watch some of the matches this season, because I gotta be honest, I only saw like 10% of them because I was just in the middle of other stuff. But the 10% that I saw were insane. Best year ever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was only there for 3 days, and that was my perception based on what I saw. And I can understand to an extent, because obviously my experience there was way more limited. But the time that I did spend in the pit area, like, there's so many things going on, even though there's TVs with matches on them. It's hard to focus on that because there's so many other things to focus on. And even if you're watching it there, it is a very different experience being in the arena and watching it live.
And now imagine you're freaking out about how you're going to turn your robot around in 3 more hours. It's
Yeah,
crazy.
with that
But
added stress.
but it was so much fun. I mean, to anybody out there who is thinking about doing it, I mean, send some messages to some teams, ask if they need an extra pair of hands. It is so worth it if you can make the trip out. It's one of the coolest things I've ever done, and I wouldn't give it up for the world.
Yeah, definitely agreed. I mean, for you, were there personally any other teams or any other robots that you were really excited to be able to meet or to see?
I mean, I've met most of these guys before, whether it's at Norwalk or one of the past BattleBots filmings. There were a couple of newbies that are just incredible robots and were really cool to see and meet, and like just talk nitty gritty of the internals and how they design certain things. I hadn't gotten as up and close to some of the robots as I was able to for this event. So I don't know. I can't really name them. All of them, all of the teams were cool, and it was great seeing them and meeting them and just hanging out.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think, because this is known, it's not a secret, but I was really excited to see more of the international teams be able to come back because they have been away for a couple of the seasons. I know Monsoon and Death Roll are both very favorite teams of mine, so it was excited to be able to see them come back onto the show.
Definitely. And seeing some of the rookies like Ominous was awesome, because I mean they should have been there years ago, and it was great to finally see robots like that.
Yes, absolutely. So, now moving on from BattleBots to NHRL, you do have a couple of robots. I know that you had originally come to Norwalk with Ablation, and you also have Ablation Retro. So kind of let's talk about your robots, and what you've done at Norwalk so far this year.
So Ablation is the first beetle weight that I created on my own. I built 2 beetle weights as a part of my college team, but once I graduated, all of the parts were property of the school, so I walked away with nothing. So once I moved down to Texas, I met a couple of friends who peer pressured me into making a beetle weight for an event in, I think it was February of 2021. And since then, I've taken Ablation to 19 events. It's my most fought bots. It's coming up on 100 fights, probably at its next event, depending on whether I go 0-2. But it's been around and iterated, and I've tried just about everything. And it's been just a really fun journey, just seeing the changes and keeping with that. Basically what I started out as just how much energy can I fit into a really cheap robot, turning into something that's a little bit more competitive, and even having a whole weapon style named after me. The Drisk type weapon that I use, where I use a printed hub with standoffs between the Drisks, has become somewhat popular, with probably over a dozen robots running some variant of it now, to the point where someone named it the Peter Bar. So I'm the father of the Peter Bar, and Ablation is where that came from.
Hey, that's like, that's the highest compliment that I would think as a builder, to have a design or a part or something named after you.
Yeah, pretty much. I wasn't really into it when it first happened, and then people kept saying it, and it started spreading, and I was like, I can't stop it now. So I think it's pretty cool. People all around just ask me how I do what I do and how that system works. And I've sent the CAD of my weapons to a dozen people. I've shared screenshots. Like, I'm an open book. So I think that's one of the things that has helped spread it. The other thing is it's cheap. I mean, a FingerTech beater bar is $56 with everything. My weapons are 22, and that's before I reuse anything. So if I pull the bearings and a couple of the bolts out, I have like a trashed weapon, I'm looking at losing like $7 or $8. Like, if it's one thing, it's cheap.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And it,
always ideal.
mhm.
And you have Ablation right there with you.
Yeah, so this is Ablation. Just about the same one that competed at the last Norwalk event, except I took it to an event in Houston the week after Norwalk, because one of the things that I do is whenever I go to Norwalk, I stupidly sign up for an event the week after Norwalk. So I do back-to-back events. It's every single time. But one thing that I changed and that I added is I added some little titanium cleats in there, like all the cool kids are doing. And Ablation drove so much better. It was before at Norwalk, it was drifting and doing crazy stuff. And once I put these cleats on, I mean, it drove like an arrow. It was really cool. And so I think that's something that I'm gonna use moving forward, just because it worked so well.
Yeah, like that's the whole thing, that I found with a lot of builders. Sometimes you try something and you never know if it's going to work, but obviously if it works well for you, then it's something that you want to change and you want to stick with in the future. Now with Ablation Retro, what for people that don't know or aren't familiar, what makes the two robots different, and where did you come up with the idea for Ablation Retro?
So the first first version of Ablation was actually version 2. I'd made a whole CAD version 1 that I didn't like, that I just threw away. And version 2 competed from February 2021 through April 2022, like 9 or something events. That version is actually what I brought as Ablation Retro. It's just the older version of Ablation. It had a lot of things done differently, some things better, most of the things were worse. I learned a lot when moving over. But the reason that I brought Ablation Retro is I'm flying to Norwalk from Texas. It's a long trip. It's expensive. It's just a whole pain to get there. And when I went in May, I brought Ablation and was like, let's go do well at this event. Yeah. And I went 1 and 2. And I was like, okay. And so the next time I went, I brought Hyperlinks and Ablation. And so I had 2 robots. I'm like, at least I'll get more fights. And both of them went 1 and 2 again. And so when I was coming to this Norwalk, it was a week or 2 weeks or something after Battlebots. I knew I was going to be burnt out. I didn't really want to rebuild hyperlinks. I didn't really want to bring a brand new robot. I didn't have the motivation for that. So I was like, I think the electronics in the old guy still work. I'll give myself a couple days to plug it in and see if it works, and just throw those stuff in a box and bring it. And so I mean, I spent like a day, I think I plugged a battery in, resoldered one joint and like replaced a couple parts and put it together and it worked. And so it came with. And I was honestly expecting both robots to go 1 and 2 or worse. I mean, that Norwalk had some crazy, crazy bots signed up, and it was insane to see both of them excel. I mean, they both tied for 9th out of over 100 robots, which is just absolutely insane.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the craziest events that I have seen to date. I think because there were just so many robots. And having basically two streams going, I didn't even know what to watch a lot of the day because there was, and I'm like, I want to watch all the matches, and you can't possibly because it's a lot of content.
I think they said they had something like 350 or 400 matches go on over the course of that day, which is just mind-boggling, you know.
I believe it. It was definitely a lot. Yeah, no, that was really great, and I love to see how much Norwalk continues to grow in a very short period of time. It seems like every time I watch, there's been something improved or whatever the case may be, and I just think it's amazing because there's so much more out there in the world of robot combat than BattleBots. I mean, BattleBots is great, but there is a lot more out there.
Yeah, I mean, BattleBots is probably 2% of the fights, 1% maybe even of the fights that go on each year. I mean, if you just look at the North American circuit alone, we're probably pushing 100 events. I mean, there's been weekends where there are 6 or 8 events happening at the same time, which is just incredible. I mean, the way that the sport is growing, it's awesome.
Yes, and it is a lot easier, as you mentioned earlier, to deal with fixing a very small robot versus a 250-pound one where, one part might cost thousands of dollars.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm also curious, just as, as a fellow competitor and someone who loves the sport, with this December event coming up very soon, I mean, I am so excited about it. I think it's just going to be insane given the robots that are going to be competing in that event. What do you think, or do you have any predictions for what you think is going to happen there?
Well, I think we all know Calvin's going to walk away with another trophy. I think that's the reasonable, the only reasonable outcome. But I think it's gonna hurt him a lot more. Last year there were not that many robots at that level, and this year there are. I mean, they're everywhere. So I guess we'll see. It'll be the whole question of, will Calvin, after taking a year off of developing Lynx, still be miles ahead of the rest of the pack? Because he came to Norwalk once this year and he just shredded everybody. And so I guess we'll have to see if everyone else has stepped up enough. But I'm excited for the fights. I mean, we have the best of the best showing up there. There's not going to be a single fight that's a dud.
That is my expectation. I hate to set like such a lofty bar, but I mean, realistically, based on the level that's of competition that's going to be there, like it's going to be amazing. I might even, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking forward to the new season of BattleBots airing, obviously, but I think that this is just as exciting at this point.
Well, you should have seen some of the fights you missed when you were at BattleBots.
I will see them. So that should be fun. But yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that's lots of stuff to look forward to in the next couple of months as far as that goes. Now something else that I wanted to talk about that I thought was really interesting is, you had mentioned that you're kind of thinking about, selling like ant weights and beta weights and things like that. Tell me a little bit about that.
So back in March, February, somewhere around that time frame, I started doing my own sourcing and basically started Repeat Robotics as a business. I put together the Repeat Drive Mini Mark I, which was the first off-the-shelf ant weight brushless motor that was commercially available. I made 100 of those and they sold out in a month and a half. And so I started working on the second version of them. And as of right now, I've sold something like 800 ant weight motors to all sorts of people. I mean, if you want to run a competitive ant weight these days, everybody suggests the motors that I have, the ones that I sell. So I started a business, started supplying parts to other roboteers. I basically saw a gap in the marketplace where there weren't any options that I really liked, and I made one for myself and tried to make something that was as good as possible and as cheap as possible and just lowered the barrier to entry and increase the competitiveness of the ant weight class. And I think I've done that. And so as of a couple days ago, I've launched my first beetle weight product, the Repeat Drive Max. So this is a 2004 motor coupled to a 29-to-1 24 mil planetary with a 6 mil output shaft, similar to the Owobotics or the Mega Spark or the one from Robot Matter, but with a larger motor. All of these other suppliers are using an 1806, and my motor puts out 2 to 3 times the power, is able to be ran on 6S and just gives you more torque. So we'll see. I did a group order with a bunch of people a while back and I've heard nothing but good reviews, but pre-orders are available on my website right now, and hopefully those will be coming soon in 2023. You'll start to see them on Norwalk bots.
That is awesome to hear. And I love to hear that too, that is like, you know, a competitor. And I mean, I think a lot of roboteers feel the same, but like that you want your competition to be at a high level because it's more exciting. Like, you know, it's more exciting for everyone when everybody can excel and be at that level.
Yeah, the problem is I was bringing my ant weights to events and they weren't even getting damaged. They were just going through the whole event. I just charge batteries, plug them in and keep going. And so I was like, start making better products, start making better ants. I mean, the combat robotics as a sport is growing exponentially, and to be able to be a part of that growth is just awesome. And it's been so much fun to just see my friends start promoting my products and actually believing in them and seeing people try and break them and failing.
Yeah, that's terrific. Again, like something that I would think would be like a very high personal compliment to know that what you have made is able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Now I'm also curious, you know, for you, is the, you know, ant weight, beetle weight space, is that kind of the place that you feel comfortable in and that's kind of where you intend to stay? Or is there ever thought to making any larger robots in the future?
So, I mean, I've been part of one heavyweight. I can tell you that I don't have 60 grand to just throw away yet, buy more motors. But I don't think that'll ever happen. I'll probably keep going to Battlebots every once in a while because it's just a lot of fun, but I don't know if I'll run my own team or build my own robot unless someone just randomly gives me a lot of money. So that's not super likely. I want to start building fairy weights. I think there are a lot of fairy weights that don't do that much damage, and I want to do some damage at the fairy weight class. So I'm going to try and build a couple of those. I've had the parts sitting in my desk for a year now, and I just haven't gotten around to building a few. So I'm going to do that. I actually mod hex bugs as fairy weights, and I put metal weapons on them and bring them to and like new boards and stuff and bring them to events. And they've done okay like that. I've won, I think, like 2 fights total with those guys, which is stupid because they're just hex bugs. So I'm gonna do that. I love ants. Ants are, I think, plastic ants specifically are the best like fun to effort ratio. I mean, I'll throw together a plastic ant in a week and bring it to an event, and it'll just be awesome, or it'll kill itself. So those are really fun. Full combat ants are a challenge, and I've been going around the country fighting the best of the best. And if you look at robot combat events, my wedge robot is up there on second, which sucks because it's a wedge and wedges suck, but it's a good wedge. So what can I say? So I think I was gonna stay with insect bots for a while. I have some of my friends that are pressuring me to make like a 12 or a 30, so I'll do that eventually, maybe next year, but we'll see. Those start to get expensive, and putting them in your checked bag is all of a sudden with a 30-pound bot, there's 2/3 of your checked bag weight. How are you gonna fit spares? So I'll have to figure some of that stuff out, but you'll probably see a bigger robot. But I think I'm gonna make a couple of new beetles because Ablation's been around for, like I said, almost 100 fights. It's been 2 years, so it's time to. I'll keep it around because it's fun, but I want to try something new.
Is there any, when you're thinking about trying something new, are you thinking about like completely new or something still with a similar weapon type, but just a different robot?
I mean, when I look at a robot, I see like very bare bones how it functionally works, and that's the robot that I built. Most of the robots that I have are pretty minimalistic and are basically all of the parts that need to be there and nothing more. So if you're talking about throwing Ablation in a different shell, I don't really see it happening. All the parts that are there and they're where they need to be. There's not too much I can do to shuffle those about. I think it'll make it'll get some changes for the new year. It seems like every time I go through a holiday season, I completely redo the robot. So it'll come back next year with some more upgrades. But I'm thinking I'm gonna build something new. I think I'm just gonna build something stupid or just another robot to bring to events.
I mean, I personally, I always tend to go for fun. I mean, I love the robots that are competitive. Like, I'm pretty sure that Jameson Go has never made a robot that I don't love. Like, I love every single robot that he's ever made. I just think that they're all amazing, and like those are really competitive robots. But then, I also love robots that just have a quirky or fun design or theme, like serial killer. I just like, I don't know why. It's just, I think it suits my personality because I'm kind of a goofy person, but like, I love serial killer. I don't,
Mhm.
I don't know how many fights it's going to win, but I don't care. I just love watching it. So
No, so I mean the craziest robot that I made was this little plastic ant weight that I made for an event at a bar. And so I was sitting down and I was like, I want to build a big spinner. Let's build an overhead, right? Because overheads suck. They're never good. So I was like, I'm gonna build an overhead. That sounds like a challenge. And one day I was sitting at the computer. I called one of my friends up. I was like, hey, I need this robot to be popular with. Oh, there go the lights. I need this robot to be popular with people who are at this bar, who are at this brewery, who are drunk. And so I was like, I'm going to give it a butt, and I'm going to name it Mr. Cheeks. And so Mr. Cheeks is my plastic ant weight spinner with a butt. And it was incredibly popular. I had a lot of people cheering for it, and it did pretty well for an overhead. It went 6-0 and is undefeated to this day. And I'm not going to fight it again, so it will remain undefeated forever. But I mean, it was just fun. And so after I built that, all of the events local to me don't have plastic ant-weight classes. And so I made a full combat version named Mrs. Cheeks with a ridiculously large weapon, also a butt. So Mrs. Cheeks has competed at a handful of events, and has gone from like, sometimes it'll go great and it'll go undefeated, and sometimes it'll go 0-2. So it's really just flipping a coin and seeing how fights end up. But some of those robots are still somehow competitive, even though, I mean, they just throw themselves around the box and don't do anything that makes sense. But they're fun. They have butts.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I also am a fan of ridiculously large weapons. The overkill that Christian Carlberg had made back in the slightly older BattleBots days is still one of my favorite robots that looks like a giant freaking knife. Like it's one of my favorites. So nothing wrong with it with an oversized weapon.
No, if you look at my history of ant weights, I like trying to see how big of a weapon I can fit on an ant. So Mr. Cheeks and Mrs. Cheeks were both like a third of their weight in a weapon. I made another version. I tried to make an undercutter named Baby Cheeks with even bigger butt. Here, you can see it, really big butt. And that one had another massive weapon that smacked a couple of people, and I think it ripped like 2 robots completely in half, which is just awesome. And so I love those. And then my plastic ant weight Ablation also has a third of its weight in the weapon. It's just this little tiny compact drum spinner that I made in a couple of days. I had a plastic ant event coming up next weekend, and I was like, I need a robot. And so I just whipped together a little drum spinner. And this thing doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's just like a little 4-wheel drive chassis with my brushless drive in it, and really big weapon that spins way too fast. One of the things that I did is I made sure that there was like a really small gap between the weapon and the frame. So when it spins, it gets really, really loud. And so I brought it to Battlebots because as that's what we do. We just bring the little robots to Battlebots to like shoot the shit with each other. I put it in the test box on one of the last days, and I gave it a spin up to full speed. And one of the people who was standing there like working on a robot or something, I think they were from Lucky, they turned around and they were like, whoa, what bot's in the box right now? And I'm like, my ant weight. I mean, it sounded louder than some of the heavy death hums that I've heard. Like it was, I don't want to say it was on par with Minotaur, but it was right about there. So we could do
That's
some crazy
impressive.
stuff.
That is impressive. Because I mean, I think that it over time there's other heavyweights that have kind of like come up to that level. But I mean, when Minotaur first debuted in BattleBots, I don't think that there was really anything comparable to the sound of that weapon. So
Well, no, it just shrieks, which is terrible because it's horrible for efficiency. I mean, the noise is just a byproduct. You're not like, it hurts things, but it sounds cool and it scares the opponents, which is all that matters.
hey, intimidation is part of the game. So that's one way to do it. Awesome. Yeah, that's so cool. So I guess for you, would you say that building ants is your favorite, or do you think you like kind of ants and beetles equally?
Beetles suck. They're really fun. They take a lot of work. They're expensive. Like, I mean, just look at the robots at finals. Like you go to an event like the last one that we had, and there were like 8 of them there. You're gonna get your robot ripped in half. It doesn't matter who you are or what your robot is or how good it is. It's gonna get completely destroyed. Ant weights aren't there yet. Ant weights, you can go and you can bring something stupid to an event and you can win. Ants are cheaper. They're smaller. They throw each other around more. They're just a lot. You could do stupid things like abrasion. Okay, so abrasion, the weapon is just straight on the motors. Like the motors are just hanging out in there. I didn't even put epoxy on the magnets. I didn't do anything to them. They're just floating in there, and it works like a charm. For a beetle weight, you do that and someone looks at you wrong, or like you just start try and spin your weapon and it'll just blow up. So beetles are hard. They're still fun. They're still rewarding. It's really, really fun when you hit someone and they go into the roof, or you get hits like the fight against either of the fights against either of the liftoffs. I mean, when you just see things hit that hard and go flying, it's amazing. But I mean, my favorite class is plastic ant weights. Like I said, there's no better fun to effort ratio. I mean, I can build a plastic ant in 3 days. It costs $8 worth of filament, and I can get it blown up and have something new the next week. It's just, in my opinion, the best.
Yes, and I'm sure it's very cheap and a very quick turnaround as long as you know what you're doing. Which, given your experience, you definitely do. No, that's really awesome. Hopefully, I would love to see something cool at the next Norwalk event from you, whether it be a form of ablation or something completely different. I guess that we'll see what happens in 2023. But also, for people that are watching that, do build the ants and the beetles and stuff like that, and you need some parts, it sounds like Peter's the guy to go to. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, I mean, take a look at my website. I have pretty good motors for ants and beetles, but all of the rest of the parts have to come from somewhere else. Like I said, I'm not trying to do this to make money. I'm trying to do it to make ants better everywhere. And it's working. Ants are getting better.
Yes, and there are competitions everywhere, probably not even places that I am aware of. So, yeah, so everybody like check out those events, support the ant weight and lower class events, because like they're a lot of fun. The smaller robots are more fun than people may think. So, that's very cool. But yeah, no, I'm so excited to have had you on to talk about this. The last event was so much fun, and I enjoyed seeing you get to have so many fights and things like that. So
Yeah, I enjoyed having that many fights and like putting on a show for the audience. I mean, the fight against Underbite, Ablation Retro got just like completely destroyed, ripped in half basically. Went up at the camera like, can you see this? Like, do you see what happened? My battery's over there, my robot's over there. I got some other hunk hanging out over here, and people from the Norwalk Discord made it an emote. And if you watched some of the fights, there's this one camera guy who I got a quick story. So when I fight robots, I prefer to sit in a chair. Everybody else is standing there doing their like Jameson Go or Daniel Friedhouse like back and forth, like ready to go. I'm just sitting there in a chair. Some of these smaller events, like the ones in Oklahoma, have a box that's 2 feet tall, and I'm like 6.5 feet tall, and so I can't see into the box. I'm like looking down at the robot, so I started sitting in a chair, and it's just fun. I mean, it's relaxing. I'm just hanging out, having a good time watching my robot get thrown in circles. And so if you watch some of the fights at Norwalk, one of the camera guys was having a hoot that I was sitting in this chair. And so I started like, when they were coming over to start the fight, I started just like putting my legs up and like relaxing and just having a grand old time. So if you watch some of the later fights, you'll see me just like cross my arms and put my legs up on the box and just look like I'm just hanging out and have it like chilling. So
I did notice that, and I'm glad that you brought up that story, because in my mind, like I was like, okay, I have to ask him about that, because no one else does that. It's just not something that you see, and you did look very relaxed.
yeah, I mean it's relaxing. So I tell people when they ask me why I sit in a chair, I'm like, yeah, because I started doing these events with these short boxes, so I couldn't see in, and they're like, yeah, but Norwalk has an 8-foot box. You can see, it's easy, just stand. And I'm like, well, when I'm sitting, I don't have to do things like think about standing, right? Like I'm just sitting there, I'm just working out. The only thing I'm thinking about is my robot. I don't have to worry about like falling over or anything like that, which usually isn't a worry, but you never know. If you hyper focus on something for too long, you never know.
Yeah, and that would probably not be a great thing to just randomly fall over during a fight.
No, you'd
So
probably lose. At least give them a free shot.
exactly. Well, I enjoyed having you on the show, and definitely excited to do more NHRL stuff in the future, because this is fun. I love talking about these robots.
And when are we going to see you out there?
That, and see, that's the whole thing, is that, you know, I'm going to Norwalk at some point, one way or another, because I've already talked to Luke about this, and Luke, you know, said, hey, come out to Norwalk, and I'm like, okay. So if I'm going to go out there, I'm just going to make a, you know, not super expensive robot that works to take with me, because I'm going anyway, so I might as well bring a robot with me. So that's the plan. But I don't know specifically when next year. So
All I'm saying, 2 months till new bot Norwalk. Be there, or I guess don't, I don't know.
that's a very short period of time. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But well, I mean, I don't know that people want to be really, I mean, like, I'm in Indiana, so I'm used to winter weather and stuff like that, but nobody wants to be like out when it's like the dead of winter. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
I don't know. I mean, Norwalk, about last time we were there, it was pretty cold in Texas, for Texas standards. And when I got to Norwalk, it was warmer than Texas. So
Yeah.
who knows? Norwalk might do their own thing.
I mean, maybe like the proximity to the ocean does weird things to the temperature. So I don't know.
You never know. I haven't been there in January, so we'll wait till then.
Yes. But yes, I'm sure that I will definitely see you at Norwalk. If not at whenever the next season of Battlebots is. So
Oh yeah, watch for it when it starts airing in 2023.
yes, absolutely. And as I have mentioned on a previous episode, I have full intent to do an interview with Greg Munson prior to the start of the season. So everybody probably better watch that one, because there may be some little things dropped on that show to get everyone excited. So we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, everyone, make sure that you like, subscribe, let me know who you want to see on the show next, but I can promise there's definitely at least a couple more NHRL interviews coming your way soon. So just check those out when they're here.
Cool.